Just took a bit longer to find my way home. Chapter 6. A Crack in the Mask. Sonic rode home with Maddie. They had managed to have fun, played around with her medical equipment, and made conversation as well. She liked Sonic. He was a sweet kid. The radio was playing some pop station as they drove down the road. Sonic sat in the front seat. Looked very small from where he was sitting though. He would need a booster seat. But Maddie paused at that train of thought. Need a booster seat? Wasn't even officially living with them. But then, what were they doing? He didn't have any family. He was all on his own. And hedgehog or not, the blue creature sitting next to her was a child, only 13. He shouldn't have to take care of himself. But having a child in the house, having to take care of the child no less, scared her a bit. Sure, she and Tom talked about kids from time to time, but eventually they decided they were fine without having kids. And if she was being completely honest, the idea of raising a child scared her. But she wasn't going to let that stop her now. Sure, this was all very sudden, but at the end of the day, Sonic needed a princess date, needed to be taken care of. She may have only met the kid yesterday evening, but she wouldn't be able to give herself if she just kicked him out onto the streets to fend for himself. Besides, it's not like he was her kid specifically. She and Tom were just giving him a place to stay. Like she said, it would be cruel to simply abandon him now. She would have to talk to her husband about it and make sure they were both on the same page. But she was sure this was the right thing. She hoped it was. Yet, as she glanced at the hedgehog next to her, who was watching the city out of his window with awe and wonder in his eyes, she couldn't help but smile. Yeah, she was positive she was making the right decision. It wasn't long before they made their way home. Maddie still had a bit of work to finish up, since she spent most of her free afternoon safe keeping the hedgehog next to her company.
So have you ever watched TV before?
She asked as they entered the house. Ozzy happily trotted over, eager for hugs and pats. She happily obliged and rubbed the canine.
Yeah, TV's awesome.
Want to see what's on?
She asked as she closed the door behind her and took off her shoes. Sonic nodded and walked over to the living room. She followed him and settled on the couch with her laptop in hand. She grabbed the remote and turned on the TV to see what was on. She saw a Disney movie up next on the current channel, the animated Beauty and the Beast, one of her favorites. She turned to the hedgehog.
Want to watch this?
I never watched it before. What's it about?
Oh, it's a classic. I think you'll like music. Want to try it?
The hedgehog nodded eagerly. She put down the remote as the movie was starting, with Sonic keeping her company beside her, Ozzy at her feet, and the movie as nice background noise. She began to work. Every now and then she would glance over at the hedgehog to gauge his reaction. She couldn't help but smile as she watched his face light up as he saw the Enchanted Castle items for the first time. He tried to sing along to the songs. He laughed at the jokes and made noises of disgust at the more romantic parts. Just as the movie was finishing, and she was just about done with her work, she glanced over at Sonic.
So, what'd you think?
I really liked it. The music was awesome. And did you see that fight with the Beast and Gaston? They would pow, and then swung his arm back and went boom. And the way he started fighting with a stone club, it was great.
Sonic said, falling back onto the couch.
Glad you enjoyed it.
She said with a smile as she finished up her work and closed her laptop. Tom would be home soon, and it was starting to get late.
Want to help me with dinner?
Sure, Maddie.
Alright, wash your hands and then meet me in the kitchen.
She watched him walk down the hallway with a smile. She entered the kitchen and opened the fridge to see what her options were. She glanced at the pantry. Spaghetti would be nice. She washed her hands before grabbing the necessary ingredients. It wasn't long before Sonic was at her side. She pulled up one of the island stools so he could stand on it.
Alright, please turn on the faucet for me.
She said, holding the pot underneath the tap. He did as instructed, and they both waited until the pot was decently filled. They went through the motions easily enough. They rolled up beets into meatballs, and he added seasoning to the meat and helped her cut vegetables. Maddie opened the freezer and smiled.
Want garlic bread to go with our pasta?
Oh, yes.
Sonic said, vibrating excitedly on the stool. By the time Tom had arrived home from work, dinner was made and the table was set. They sat down to eat. Dinner was different with Sonic present, but it was still nice. In fact, dinner felt more alive with Sonic present. It wasn't until dishes were being dried and Sonic was situated on the couch watching another movie did she finally get a chance to talk to Tom about what had been on her mind since she had gotten home from work.
I want to get your opinion on something.
She began as she cleaned a plate and handed it to him to dry.
Oh yeah? What's that?
Maddie peeked into the living room to make sure that Hedgehog wasn't paying attention. She was relieved to see that all his attention was solely focused on the action scene on the TV. She leaned closer to her husband and lowered her voice.
It's about Sonic.
What about him?
Now that she was put on the spot, she wasn't sure how to word what she wanted to say. She figured ripping off the band-aid was the best way to go, so she did just that.
I think it'd be best if we let him stay with us.
Tom's eyes widened.
I know it's sudden and we've only known him for a day, but he's just a kid, Tom, and it would just be, of course, until he can sort himself out or for as long as he needs, and
She was quickly silent, seeing the smile that spread across his face.
I was thinking the same thing, Mads. He told me some things, Maddie. He lives in a cave. I'm not exactly sure. He took care of himself the whole time he's been here on Earth.
Maddie's face fell at this new revelation.
poor thing.
She muttered to herself, continuing to wash dishes and hand them off to Tom to dry.
It's sudden, but it's the right decision.
Maddie nodded.
I hope it is.
Should we bring it up with him? Ask him if he's alright with staying?
Maddie looked back out into the living room, watching the boy.
I think it would be best. The last thing we need is for him to come to the conclusion that we'll eventually chicken out.
Tom nodded. They both finished washing the dishes, but as he finished putting the last plate up, an idea formed in his mind. He peeked into the living room.
Hey Sonic, wanna have a little movie night?
Sonic's eyes brightened.
Really? With both of you?
Yeah, bud.
Yes! What movie should we watch? Can we watch a movie with Keanu Reeves?
How do you know who Keanu Reeves is, but not know about Supreme Pizza?
Keanu is an important part of culture, Tom.
Of course, but I was thinking of something else. You said you wanted Beauty and the Beast, right?
Oh yeah, that was a cool movie.
Well, why don't we watch some movies from the Disney Renaissance, also known as the 90s?
Tom could see Sonic vibrating in place.
Let's do it.
It wasn't long before the four members of the household were situated on the couch with a large bowl of popcorn in the middle. They started with Hercules, then went on to Aladdin and Mulan. They decided to pick out one more movie for the night.
What about The Lion King?
What's that?
Oh, we're definitely watching it then.
Tom said before anybody could object. Nani playfully shook her head before starting the movie. Everything started out fine. Until they got to the death of Mufasa, which both Tom and Manny had kind of expected. Everyone got at least a little misty-eyed when they watched that scene for the first time. But maybe putting this movie on wasn't one of the smartest decisions they had made. Sonic was quiet. Too quiet. And then Scar spoke as he walked on screen.
Simba, what have you done?
Look at what you've done, Sonic.
It was an accident. I didn't mean for it to happen.
It was an accident. I didn't mean to get Longclaw killed.
Tom felt Sonic tense up next to him. He could feel him begin to shake. He glanced down at the hedgehog, but before Tom could ask if he was alright, Scar began to rub salt into the wound.
And if it weren't for you, he'd still be alive.
If you had only done what she had said, she'd still be alive.
Sonic burst into tears. Tom and Manny turned to face the hedgehog.
You okay, bud?
Sonic didn't respond though. He just continued to cry. Sure, it was a very sad scene in the movie, but Tom had a feeling this wasn't just because Mufasa had died on screen. And then it hit him.
Well, I don't have parents. Never knew them. And, let's just say my previous guardian isn't here anymore.
But the movie kept going on.
Run away, Simba. Run. Run away and never return.
And remember, never stop running.
And before they could even try and ask Sonic again if everything was alright, he jumped off the couch and ran down the hall. Maddie quickly paused the movie. They both just sat there for a few good seconds, unsure of what they should do before Tom stood up.
I'll go after him.
He murmured quietly. Without waiting for his wife to respond, he got up and went in the direction Sonic had ran off to. It wasn't hard to find the hedgehog. He found him hiding in the hallway bathroom, behind the shower curtain, and with tears streaming down his cheeks. Tom knelt in front of the hedgehog.
Hey, Sonic. Mind if I touch you?
He was worried the little guy hadn't heard, but after a few beats of silence, he eventually nodded, before burying his face into his knees, a sob echoing throughout the bathroom. It broke Tom's heart. He gently rested his hand on Sonic's head and just silently ran his fingers through his quills. He was careful to make sure he didn't accidentally poke himself. Tom looked at the boy in front of him. So much trauma, and there was probably so much more he didn't know about. He glanced down to see Sonic's gloved hands hugging his arm so tightly he was worried he would cut off his blood circulation. In fact, all of him just seemed tense. He gently placed both hands on the boy's shoulders. He watched the boy curl into himself even tighter.
Relax. You're going to hurt yourself. Breathe.
Tom hoped he was doing this right. Sure, he knew the basics of helping people calm down after something happened. He was a police officer. It wasn't his first rodeo. But kids to him were a completely different ballgame. Thankfully, Sonic did eventually begin to loosen up. He slowly lifted his head so he could see the man in front of him. Tom smiled.
Hey, Sonic. Can you take a few more deep breaths with me?
Sonic sniffled before rubbing his eyes.
Yeah.
Tom nodded.
Good.
He took a laughably big and exaggerated breath. Sonic couldn't help but laugh, but he copied the man's breathing. It wasn't long before the tears had begun to slow, and all that was left was the silence between the two of them.
Hey, I'm sorry about that. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable or anything.
Sonic shrugged.
It's fine. I overreacted. I should be the one saying sorry. I ruined movie night.
He said, shrieking into himself again.
Hey, no. It's all right. You have nothing to apologize for. And nothing is ruined. I promise.
Sonic looked up to meet his eyes again.
Promise?
Tom nodded.
I promise.
Base, Donut Lord.
Donut Lord.
Tom watched Sonic freeze for a second before he let out what sounded like a nervous laugh.
Donut Lord? Who's Donut Lord? I never met a Donut Lord before. Hey, you want to continue watching that movie? Great, let's go.
And before Tom could respond to that barrage of words, Sonic had gotten out of the shower and was on his way back to the living room.
Sonic!
Tom walked back to the living room to find Sonic situated on the couch once more, right beside Maddie. Tom sat down.
Are you sure you want to continue watching?
Positive.
Tom and Maddie exchanged reluctant looks before pausing the movie. Thankfully, the rest of the movie went very well, and Sonic seemed to enjoy it. But it was getting late, and Maddie and Tom did indeed have work tomorrow. As Maddie cleaned up from movie night, Tom elected to show Sonic where he would be sleeping.
I thought I was sleeping on the couch.
Sonic asked as he followed Tom through the hall.
I think this will be better.
Tom opened the door and turned on the light. It was a simple guest room with a big bed, simple decor, and a window.
This will only be temporary until we can find somewhere better for you to sleep. Unless you want to keep this room.
Sonic turned around, eyes wide with hints of fear swirling in his green irises.
What are you saying?
I'm saying you're free to stay here for as long as you need.
Really?
Of course, bud. Better than sleeping on the couch or, oh gosh, the streets, right?
Sonic slowly nodded before turning around and slowly walking inside, as if his mere presence would cause the room to disappear. He hesitantly touched the bed and hopped onto it. He looked up to meet the man's eyes.
Are you sure it's okay if I'm here? Just Just let me know if you want me to leave, and I will. I don't want to cause you or Maddie any problems.
I'm sure, Sonic. Maddie and I have already talked this over. We're fine with you staying for as long as you need.
Oh, okay.
Of course, unless you have somewhere to go, then you're free to leave whenever.
No, I mean, it's just, yeah. Thanks for all of this.
Tom watched as Sonic took off his pathetic shoes. He would need to get new ones for him. He couldn't begin to imagine how uncomfortable they probably were.
Good night, Tom.
Good night, Sonic. Sleep well.
And he closed the door, leaving it just a crack before heading to his and Maddie's room. Right as they were in bed, the lights were off, and they were both comfortable under their sheets. Did he begin to talk?
He tried to play it off. He has so much that we don't even know about, and Mads,
I know.
She replied as she grabbed onto his hand, squeezing it tightly.
he's scared. So very scared.
I know.
This won't be easy, you know, having a traumatized kid in the house.
Maddie turned onto her side, so she was facing him. In the dark, he could make out a small smile.
Well, since when have the Wachowskis ever had it easy? We'll help him.
Tom smiled, brought her hands up to his lips, placing a gentle kiss on her knuckles. They both fell asleep shortly after.